welcome.
Great.
Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You work for a Great Place to Work Institute, and your organization are dedicated to make every workplace a great one.
Absolutely.
So tell me, how would you describe a really great workplace?
Okay, I suppose it's really important that a lot of people have a kind of view that it's about bean bags and free food, right? Mm-hmm. It's far from that, okay? Mm-hmm. 27 years ago, the person who founded Great Place to Work was asked to, he was a journalist and he was asked to write a book about really brilliant workplaces, and at that time he didn't think there were any, and he actually thought, because he knew of all the conflicts happening in workplace and he could relate to strikes and the like, but what he did was he went around and he found that there were actually great workplaces out there, and there was also a correlation between the workplaces and the performance of those companies, which was fantastic. So he went back and studied them further, and he found out that there was one key defining feature of a great workplace, and that was the level of trust that existed in that workplace. I think it's really important for people to understand that when we're seeing a big change in organizations where employees aren't looking for the organization to take care of their career or their life or their life, they're taking ownership themselves and taking a level of responsibility in everything they do. So even in terms of creating a great place to work, they know that when I come to work every day, how I interact with other people is having a huge effect on whether I'm building a high trust relationship with other people, and in turn then if everybody focuses on trying to build high trust in how they treat people, how they interact with people, how they support people, that by the end of it, the whole organization will become high trust.
That's wonderful. So what you're saying is not only about management, it's also about each and one of the employees meeting up at work every day and choosing to contribute to the culture, basically.
We have organizations
and
the employees all wear t-shirts and it says, I make this organization a great place to work.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So it of course has a lot to do with communication, how people communicate with each other. We talk about authentic communication. What does that mean to you?
So I think people, if you're not authentic, people can see it a mile away, and they just tune out. Communicating has to be an exchange of meaning. And I think it's really important that when you sit down with somebody that you take time to actually think about how this communication could actually affect them. And that's the piece that's often lost. That people think it's just a matter of sort of saying X, Y, and Z. But it's actually, what really matters is the engagement that actually happens between those people.
So when we talk about communication between teams, let's say that I'm in a team and I need to collaborate with someone else in another team, maybe the two teams together. We don't really know each other from before and we need to kind of establish that kind of trust. How would you recommend that we communicate, like first time we meet, for example?
So I think it's really important that you should actually build rapport, by actually just talking to that person about them, not about their work persona or the like, or about work straight away, but it's actually finding out what they're into as a person, so you can kind of conceptually get a sense of who that person is. And then it's trying to understand where they're coming from and the work that they're actually dealing with on a constant basis. We're dealing with a lot of organizations now who, maybe they're together in the one site, but actually they're actually dealing in a matrixed organization, so therefore they could be reporting to team members and team leaders in places all over the world. And what those organizations found was that the people may be in the one place, but reporting to different people all over the world. And what they needed to do was actually sit down with these people who are on other teams dealing with other things and get them to understand, well, we'll give you an update on what's happening in the finance, or we'll give you an update on what's happening in operations, or so that people understand the other side, where they're coming from, what they're working on. And that's something that really builds high levels of understanding and then collaboration.
So we talk about the importance of trust and how to communicate, and sometimes it breaks down, and either bad communication, some kind of distrust. Why do you think that happens, and how can we repair it?
Life is life, people are different, and sometimes how I interpret something you can do, maybe I'm negative for some particular reason, and I put a construct on that's quite negative, but the trust has been damaged. And I think it's really important, if you sense that trust is damaged, that you actually just meet with the person and sit down and sort of say, listen, I get the sense that I've done something that's affected our relationship, and that disappoints me, but I'd really love to know what it is. So what you're asking the person is to rather than just keep it in, to let it out and tell them what it is, how you've let them down, how they've perceived what you've done in a particular way. Because I absolutely believe that everybody's good, but just sometimes people behave badly, and for whatever reason that's there. And it's really important that you get it out in the open and you talk it out and you get an understanding of what you did, and that for that particular person when you're working with them again, that you can't do that. And we often talk about this thing that it's about intentions, that you as a person, we all do it, we tend to judge ourselves by our intentions, but everybody else judges us by our actions. And it's oftentimes really important that you kind of talk more about your intentions, and particularly in a workplace when you're making decisions. It's really important that you talk to people as to why you're making the decision and the way you're making it and what you're intending as a consequence of that, rather than just doing it and letting people jump in and assume and get a construct on that can be very negative, even though you didn't mean that at all.
Yeah.
So it's really good to talk more and openly about why you're doing what you do. That kind of helps to build trust.
So if you and I have a conversation and you say something, and in my mind I hear something, and that's actually quite rude or mean what you said, and I'm not sure what you said, then I should ask you back and say, "Hey, John, this is what I heard. Is that really what you meant?"
Did you really say that?
Yeah. Did you really say? Did you really say what I heard?
People are different culturally. Also, what you can say to one person in one country. If you say that or use that word it can be misinterpreted in a different way in another country. So it's I suppose to be aware of that, not to say that you should change constantly how you communicate, but just be aware of that and the sensitivities and trying to understand different people's culture is important because there are significant differences in terms of culture.
And it's good always to check in again, right? Go that extra round just to make sure that we are understanding each other right.